Colorado's energy providers justified the new cost headed your way by saying that cold snap that snapped Texas could have been so much worse. Aurora police look for new tools to fight street racing after those racers shut down a major highway last night. My thoughts on the riot at CU Boulder that people don't want to call a riot. And a reminder that while humans struggle to get back to normal life, the natural world keeps its rhythms in Colorado's most beautiful spots. A trip to the San Luis Valley, next. Most everyone's tried to justify some kind of expensive purchase like this to a spouse or a parent. You're saying, well, yes, it cost a lot, but I actually saved money if you think about how much I could have spent. As my father-in-law likes to say, don't tell me how much was off, tell me how much was still on. And that's kind of what Colorado's energy companies are trying right now, telling state regulators that they needed to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on expensive natural gas because they could have spent so much more during the recent cold snap. Since they want you to pay for it, Marshall Zellinger's asking questions.
When we talk about natural gas transparency, we have to show you gas meters since you can't see natural gas. State utility regulators are asking for transparency. Why did 4 Colorado energy companies spend a combined $750 million extra on natural gas over 4 days in mid-February when it was at or below zero?
It is a really great illustration of how complex utility operation can be.
Oil and gas attorney and adjunct professor Breezy Carlson helped me understand the utility company's responses.
When you're relying on something that arrives just in time, you either need to store it or you need to know that you are going to be exposed if there's a shortage.
Each company had to explain how it prepared for February 13th through the 16th. As part of its defense, Xcel wrote, because of the President's Day holiday on February 15th, no day ahead gas markets were open, meaning that any necessary gas purchases for February 16th had to be made on February 12th. Xcel, which covers 60% of Colorado, spent $619 million more in gas and electricity over those 4 days in February. But the company explained that because of long-term contracts and storage, it saved customers from having to spend an additional $825 million. Black Hills Energy, which serves customers in places like Castle Rock and Glenwood Springs, spent $105 million more, but said its business practices saved customers $68.5 million. Atmos, which covers places like Greeley and Steamboat Springs, spent $26 million, and Colorado Natural Gas, which serves areas like Bennett and Fairplay, spent $5.8 million. Neither of those companies said how much pre-planning saved customers. We told you last week, Xcel seeks to charge typical residential customers a total of $264 over 2 years to recover its costs. Black Hills estimates gas and electric customers will pay between $261 and $552 in 2 years. Atmos customers in the north would pay $180 over 2 years. In the southeast, like Lamar, $104 over 2 years. Colorado Natural Gas did not provide an estimate for what it seeks to charge customers.
My favorite part of transparency are some of the documents that are not very transparent. The energy companies also had to tell the PUC how they asked for conservation, perhaps instead of needing as much gas. They all provided different answers. Social media here, news releases there. Xcel boiled it down to this, though, that it made decisions on Friday ahead of a holiday weekend, so any conservation effort would have had to have happened before that decision was made, before the cold weather actually happened. And if Xcel had chosen to purchase less fuel going into that weekend on the belief that people were actually going to conserve that weekend, and they didn't, there might not have been enough to go around and we'd be having a Texas-like investigation instead, Kyle.
People care a lot, Marshall, because their money is involved in it, and it's also just kind of interesting to see how the sausage is made, as if we were heating our homes with sausage, which would be quite fragrant. Thank you, Marshall. Tonight's next question comes to us from Ken. Ken and his wife were out of town for the Valentine's Day weekend freeze. He says before they left, they turned the heat way down. Obviously, they weren't home to use a lot of extra energy. And he wants to know if they're going to have to pay that extra cost that Xcel is passing on to consumers for Xcel's energy purchases during the cold snap. They weren't roasting extra sausages at Ken's house while he was away. Ken, Xcel says you will see a lower bill than perhaps some of your neighbors that didn't do that, but your savings came when you left town and you chose to turn your heat down. you're still going to be charged those additional fees for extra energy that XL purchased, provided that they get the go-ahead from regulatory agencies on that. There is no opting out of it or getting some kind of pass because you were not part of that peak usage that weekend. We have some mixed news on the COVID-19 front in Colorado today. There is the nationwide, really encouraging guidance from the CDC that people who are fully vaccinated can begin to gather in small groups without masks or social distancing. And this is a big one, that vaccinated people can gather in small settings with unvaccinated people if those people are not at high risk. That means a lot of grandparents going to be hugging grandbabies. The less encouraging news is Colorado specific, and it's the variant, the virus that was seen in South Africa. That variant is now here. 2 staff members and 1 inmate at the Buena Vista Correctional Complex tested positive for the variant. This is the type that spreads more quickly than the others. We chug along on vaccinations. More than 1 million people in our state have received their first dose of the vaccine. First night, we can tell you that. We have 18.2% of the state population has been vaccinated, and more than half of those people have received 2 doses. When it comes to hospitalizations, there are 311 people currently hospitalized in Colorado with the virus. That is up 5 patients from the day before. This time last week, there were 369 patients in our hospitals, so we really have kind of plateaued by that measure. Between the riot in Boulder and the street racers in Aurora, Colorado had a wild weekend. Those street racers shut down 225 in Aurora last night to do donuts and such on the highway. Aurora police sure got everybody's attention when they put out a bulletin saying they thought 600 to 800 cars were involved. Today we learned that's a bit of an overestimation. Though police told our Steve Steger they're looking at a new strategy to stop the racing.
In daylight, you could see the evidence of what closed down 225 southbound Sunday night. Skid marks in the shape of donuts, carved by a bunch of people who want you to know how cool their trucks are.
We're pissed off, man, I tell you. The community's frustrated, we're frustrated.
Aurora police not mincing words about what happened Sunday, though they are altering some. On Sunday, the department tweeted 600 to 800 cars were involved in this.
I don't know how many cars participated, but their actions led to about 600 to 800 people gridlocked on the interstate. I don't believe that there were 600 to 800 people actually participating in the racing.
Street racing is a growing problem in Aurora and the entire Front Range.
Doing donuts and, peel outs and all of that, and it's very destructive to the property.
Stephen Shepard runs a trade group representing building owners in the metro area. He says recent cases of street racers seeking out open space have led to damage to property, including one warehouse owner he knows who was hit really hard.
Already racking up to close to $40,000 worth of damage and extra security costs.
By the time we can catch up to them, they're gone.
Illegal street racers are tough to catch, and when they are caught, there isn't much of a punishment.
If we can catch these people, you're going to get a summons.
Some cities are exploring stiffer penalties. In Colorado Springs, the city council will vote this week whether to approve an ordinance allowing police to seize a vehicle involved in street racing. Aurora City Council is looking at something similar, says City Councilwoman Francoise Bergen.
Police have told me that if you seize the vehicle, that really gets people's attention. It would be really to temporarily put a hold on the vehicle through an impound lot and then assess fees.
We hope that if we can start towing and we can start charging these people even more money to get their cars out, hopefully that's a deterrent.
So Bergen is still drawing up that potential new ordinance. Denver already has a similar law like that in place, and there is a metro-wide, really statewide task force that's looking into the best solutions to try to rid the area of this problem. They have a website set up where you can actually send tips about illegal street racing. Councilwoman Bergen says that, this isn't just an Aurora problem. She's really hoping that state lawmakers take a look at this and maybe potentially think about beefing up state law when it comes to these kinds of street races across the metro area, Kyle.
If they're going to do something, Steve, it does seem like a united approach would make some sense, because if you're talking about 225, you're talking about 25 where people race as well. You're going just jurisdiction to jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and it would be so easy to just move the party down the highway a bit if you know that, say, Denver and Aurora are getting tough on it.
Yeah, and the people who are out there doing that stuff would really like to show you how impressive their cars are and how quickly they can get to that next point to do the race. So, yeah, that's the reason why a broad blanket approach would work a little bit better, she says.
Impressive vehicles. We are all very, very impressed by the vehicles. Thank you, Steve. So, some CU Boulder students decided to have themselves a riot over the weekend. Started as a party, but once you assemble a mob that starts injuring police officers and throwing things at first responders, that's a riot. It was not a protest against COVID-19 health restrictions, as some people want to seem to claim. We have seen the power of protest, and calling a party that turned into a riot a protest, that's insulting to all of the CU Boulder students who participated in actual protests and drove social change. The Boulder Daily Camera reports that the Interfraternity Council is blaming it on the nice weather combined with the COVID restrictions. Except you didn't see college students popping off at every other campus up and down the Front Range where the weather was just as nice and the COVID restrictions were just as uncomfy. Now, some CU Boulder students just decided to have a riot. Now, police and prosecutors are going to decide what to do about it. Gun safety is debated on the Colorado House floor as a warning goes out about a shooting near the Capitol. A popular festival in southern Colorado has a different look this year, and, perhaps that's for the better.
Things are normal. You get out here and you have a little bit of hope.
Hope. Let's get a bit of that next. You did something particularly special with your Word of Thanksgiving last week. I just wanted to update you on the totals. We picked Epic Experience, a nonprofit out of Arvada that provides outdoor camps for cancer survivors. And one reason we picked them is because it's a charity that's close to the heart of Sharon Ritzman. Her recent obituary asked for donations to Word of Thanks. A number of you pointed that out to us. You then went out and raised more than $40,000 for Epic Experience, which means more cancer survivors can apply for that free camp experience and more of them will be able to go. You've now raised more than $3.1 million for Colorado's small to mid-sized nonprofits since last summer. Back Wednesday with a fresh idea.
From 70s to snow, that's March, and that could be our week of weather. Today's high almost 70 degrees, almost 80 down south. But we're tracking a powerful storm system off the coast of California, 1,400 miles out, but has the potential to stay on a path that could mean some pretty good snow by the time we hit Friday night. Not tonight, partly cloudy, mild and dry, lows in the mid-30s. Tomorrow, sunshine, upper 60s. High clouds come in the afternoon. Isolated showers Thursday night with snow developing Friday, continuing until Sunday. Weekend high temperatures in the 30s with the potential for some heavy snow.
The shooting today at Civic Center Park that sent the Colorado Capitol into lockdown right as legislators were discussing a bill about the safe storage of guns. Shooting happened just after noon. Capitol was placed on lockdown for a few minutes. Abundance of caution, one of those things. Police say that one man was taken to the hospital and police arrested the suspect. Guns were the topic inside the Capitol at the same time. Democratic State Representative Susan Lontine tweeted out that they received their shelter-in-place text alert from the State Patrol right in the middle of their debate on gun safety. This bill would require guns to be securely stored when they're not in use so that kids or people who can't have firearms aren't able to get at them. This is yet another contentious bill at the state capitol where Republicans do not have the votes to stop the Democratic majority from getting its way. Speaking of the state legislature, may I make a recommendation, something that is not ours but I think is absolutely worth your time. It is a look back at a few of the pioneering women who made an impact early on in our state legislature. Good read for International Women's Day today. It's about Carrie Clyde Holly, Clara Creshingham, and Frances Clock. They were all elected in 1895. Holly's priority, and the law known by her last name, was raising Colorado's age of sexual consent from 16 to 18 years old. Her goal was to protect young women from being victimized in society. That piece was written by Kara Mason. She's now with the Aurora Sentinel. She put together a few years back for the now dormant Pueblo Pulp. It's still available to read on the Pulp's website. We'll put a link to Kara's article on the next Facebook page. Quick question. Why do you love living in Colorado? Is your answer anything like this one?
All we have to do is step out and just drive a little bit, and we're in a magical wonderland.
The pandemic means fewer humans witnessing one of the great natural displays in this state. Next. The pandemic has not canceled nature, though it is changing the way that us humans interact with it. Take the annual migration of tens of thousands of sandhill cranes through southern Colorado. The birds kept their travel plans despite the pandemic, but that annual festival where the people gather to admire them, canceled. Our Ann Herbst shows us an unusual sand crane season in the San Luis Valley.
The light is gorgeous. We have a beautiful sunrise. And we're surrounded by wildlife. We're surrounded in nature.
Man, don't you just love Colorado?
I think it doesn't get much better than this.
Barbara Fleming knows what's up. She's a wildlife photographer and all-around cool person, even at 6 a.m.
My dog looked at me like I was crazy, which I probably am.
Barbara is here to capture the sandhill cranes,
flapping their wings fiercely.
They descend on Monte Vista National Wildlife Refuge every spring.
I totally love the noise. It's mesmerizing. Look at all of them way out there. There's thousands of them.
More like tens of thousands.
You know, most of us have spent a year or more in isolation, having to stay home. And all we have to do is step out and just drive a little bit. And we're in a magical wonderland. This is better than Disneyland.
Though the birds clearly don't know about social distancing, the people who run the area's annual crane festival do.
This is so incredible. Look at all of them flying around.
The event's 38th year will be held virtually, but organizers still want people like Barbara.
Here they come.
To spread out on this open space.
I feel like I can take a deep breath and relax a little bit and feel like I'm going to be okay. You know, it gives me a sense of hope. And that's exciting. Woo!
It's hard not to get caught up in Colorado.
I'm a sandhill crane.
The only state with rad in the middle is still rad all over.
It's the place to be when there's a pandemic going on.
For next, this is Ann Herbst.
Ann Herbst dropped rad into a story, so she is a happy woman. The virtual Crane Festival begins on March 12th. The actual cranes will be down in the San Luis Valley until late March, early April. Details on both in Ann's story on 9news.com. Final word goes to you in feedback next. Note in from Hank tonight, who was thanking us for the story that we did about the NREL engineer who bootlegged together that app that allows people to look for vaccine appointments in one stop. Hank says, I booked an appointment with ease and honestly don't know how I would have booked an appointment without it. We have received dozens, if not more than 100 of messages just like that. And Sandy says, I'm on the Western Slope. I know more and more people who have their shots. We could have an almost normal summer. That's the hope.